She was sent to study humanity. She wasn't supposed to love it. The girl from the stars first saw Earth through rain. Not orbital scans, not diplomatic briefings. Rain, cold, heavy, real, falling on cracked asphalt outside a convenience store in rural Oregon. She stood beneath the awning, skin humming faintly beneath her human disguise, watching water slide down neon-lit windows. To her people, Earth was classified as chaotic but insignificant. A loud planet, a young species. Emotionally unstable. She had believed every word of it until she met him. His name was Daniel Carter, 23, American, former engineering student who had dropped out to care for his father. He worked nights, drank too much coffee, and carried a quiet sadness that never appeared in his voice. He was not special, and that was what made him dangerous. Her true name could not be spoken by human tongues on her world. Names were frequencies, not words. Hers translated loosely to Hashimi, a concession she made for Earth. Her species, the AI, originated from a star system where emotion was regulated, controlled, refined into something elegant and distant. They admired humanity the way one admired fire, useful, beautiful, and best observed from afar. Hashimi had been sent as an observer. Her assignment was simple: live among humans, study emotional variance, report on cultural instability, avoid attachment at all costs. The final directive was emphasized 17 times in her briefing. Attachment compromises judgment. She repeated it to herself often, especially when Daniel smiled. He treated her like she was normal. Daniel noticed her the third night she visited the store. "You're new," he said, sliding a coffee across the counter. "You always stand like you're waiting for instructions." She blinked. "Is that strange?" He shrugged. "Only if you're human." Something in his voice wasn't mocking, it was curious, gentle. Hashimi had prepared for suspicion, fear, even hostility. She was not prepared for kindness without expectation. She returned the next night and the next. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. She learned human habits through him. How Americans used humor to deflect pain, how silence could mean trust, how loneliness was often hidden behind routine. Daniel never asked where she was from. That mattered more than he could ever know. Her people began to notice the anomaly. The AI did not sleep the way humans did. Their minds remained partially awake, tethered to a shared observational lattice. When Hashimi's emotional metrics began to deviate, the system flagged her. Her heart rate, an organ her people considered vestigial, began to accelerate in Daniel's presence. Her neural patterns softened. Her reports became less precise. She was ordered to recalibrate. She was warned. Humans form bonds too quickly. They imprint emotionally. They do not let go easily. Hashimi tried to comply. She stopped visiting the store. 3 days later, Daniel found her. "Did I do something wrong?" He stood outside her apartment, rain soaking his jacket, eyes tired but sincere. The question broke something in her. "No," she said too quickly. "You did nothing wrong." "Then why do I feel like I lost something?" he asked. Hashimi stared at him, at the human who had unknowingly dismantled years of emotional conditioning simply by being present. She could have lied. She could have erased herself from his life the way her people erased planets from records. Instead, she told the truth. Not everything, but enough. "I'm not from here," she said. Daniel studied her face for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said. "I figured." She laughed, an unregulated sound, sharp and unfamiliar, and in that moment her fate was sealed. Love was not part of the mission. Hashimi learned that human love was not efficient. It was messy, painful, illogical. It made you choose someone even when logic said you shouldn't. Her people came for her a week later, a silent craft in the clouds. A message only she could hear. "Return immediately. Observation complete." Human attachment confirmed as liability. Daniel never saw the ship. He only saw her standing in the parking lot, shaking. "Are you leaving?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "Are you coming back?" She looked at him, this fragile, stubborn, beautiful human, and made the first truly human decision of her life. "I don't know," she said. And that uncertainty, terrifying, hopeful, irreversible, was what love felt like. The galaxy would not approve. The AI would call it contamination. Earth would call it impossible. The universe would call it insignificant. But two beings from opposite ends of existence had done something forbidden. They had chosen each other. And somewhere among the stars, a civilization built on control began to realize that humanity's greatest weapon was not violence, but its ability to make even the stars fall in love. She did not leave that night. Hashimi stood in the parking lot long after the rain slowed to a mist, the message from her people still echoing like a phantom ache behind her eyes. The AI ship remained cloaked above the clouds, patient, confident. They believed time itself would correct her hesitation. They underestimated Earth. They underestimated him. Daniel watched her carefully. He had learned instinctively that pushing her made her retreat, but waiting made her stay. "You don't have to explain," he said finally. "But don't disappear without saying goodbye." The word goodbye struck her harder than any command signal. "I can't promise that," she said, voice unsteady. "But I can promise this: if I leave, it won't be because of you." That was the moment Daniel understood something fundamental. Whatever she was running from, it was bigger than fear. He nodded. "Then come inside, it's cold." Such a small invitation, such a dangerous one. She learned what humans did when they chose. Hashimi stayed. Days turned into weeks. She walked Earth with a heightened awareness, every sensory input amplified now that she was no longer only observing. Sunlight felt warmer, food tasted richer. Music, especially the old Japanese city pop Daniel discovered and played clumsily for her, did something to her internal rhythm she could not classify. At night when Daniel slept, she stood by the window and listened to the stars. The AI lattice buzzed constantly now. Concern, disapproval, escalation. Her people were not angry yet. They were disappointed, and disappointment among the AI was often followed by correction. Daniel learned the truth in pieces she told him slowly, not all at once. Humans were fragile with revelations like that. She explained that she wasn't born on Earth, that the sky he saw was not the first one she learned to navigate, that her body, though human in shape, was a translation, an interface. Daniel listened without interruption. When she finally stopped speaking, waiting for disbelief or fear, he only asked one question. "Are you in danger?" "Yes," she answered honestly. "From them?" he asked. She nodded. He exhaled, rubbing his face. "Figures." That night he held her for the first time, not in panic, not in desperation, but with quiet resolve. His arms were warm, grounding, human. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Hashimi's internal signal went completely silent. No lattice, no commands, only him. The AI decided to intervene. The first sign was the sky. Daniel noticed it while driving, how the clouds seemed wrong, too smooth, too symmetrical. Hashimi felt it immediately. "They're here," she whispered. The AI ship decloaked at dawn. It did not announce itself. It did not threaten. It simply appeared, a vast, elegant structure hovering above the forested hills, geometry bending light into soft blues and whites. Beautiful, terrifying. Emergency broadcasts followed. Governments scrambled. Militaries watched helplessly as their instruments failed to lock on. The AI did not need weapons, they needed compliance. Hashimi stood in the open field outside town, Daniel beside her, as a column of light descended. Figures emerged, tall, luminous, emotionless. "Hashimi," they spoke, not with mouths but with certainty. "Your mission is compromised. Return." Daniel stepped forward instinctively. "Don't," she said softly. He ignored her. "She's staying," he said, voice shaking but firm. The AI did not acknowledge him. Human emotional interference confirmed, they transmitted. Then one of them turned slightly toward Daniel and paused. Humans were anomaly rich. The AI had studied humanity for centuries from a distance. What they had never fully understood was proximity. Daniel's neural patterns were chaotic, non-linear, inconsistent, but layered within that chaos was something that resisted external harmonization. Not strength, not intelligence, attachment. The AI reached toward him psychically and recoiled. Confusion rippled through the lattice. Hashimi felt it and understood. Humans were not powerful because they were violent. They were powerful because they anchored each other. "You can't take me without consequence," she said clearly. "Not anymore." The AI evaluated, calculated. For the first time in their long history, a human was not irrelevant to the equation. A choice was offered: return, the AI said to Hashimi, or remain and be severed. Severed meant exile. No lattice, no return. Mortality accelerated to human limits. Daniel looked at her, eyes wide. You don't have to. I do, she said gently. This is what choosing means. She stepped away from the light. The lattice screamed as the connection collapsed. The AI withdrew, not defeated, but unsettled. She became something new. Hashimi fell to her knees, gasping as her physiology recalibrated. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground, holding her as the sky slowly returned to normal. The ship vanished. The world exhaled. She looked up at him, eyes still glowing faintly but softer now. I can't go back, she said. Daniel smiled through tears. Good, Earth's kind of awful without you. She laughed fully, freely this time, and rested her forehead against his. In choosing him, she had lost the stars. But she had gained something her people never truly understood, a future that wasn't predetermined. And far above, as the AI retreated into the void, their lattice recorded a final, troubling conclusion. Humanity was not contagious. Love was. The galaxy would not forget that lesson, and neither would she. The world did not end that day. That, more than anything, unsettled everyone. No invasion followed the appearance of the ship. No public declaration. No war. The skies cleared, the news cycle burned itself out, and governments quietly reclassified the event under layers of deniability and disaster language. But Hashimi felt the difference immediately. The silence where the lattice used to be was permanent. It wasn't painful anymore, just quiet. A deep, irreversible quiet that meant she was truly here now. Bound to gravity, to time, to fragility. Bound to Daniel. And Earth noticed her in ways it hadn't before. Human systems are very good at finding what doesn't belong. It started subtly. Cell phones malfunctioning when she walked past, streetlights flickering, cameras refusing to focus on her face, algorithms flagging her presence as data corruption rather than anomaly. Daniel noticed first. You mess with electronics when you're stressed, he said one night, half joking, half concerned. I'm not doing it on purpose, she replied. She wasn't lying. The severance had destabilized her physiology. Without the AI lattice to offload excess cognitive energy, it had nowhere to go. Human systems weren't designed to interact with minds that processed probability, emotion, and perception simultaneously. She was learning limitation. It frightened her more than the AI ever had. They came in suits, not ships. 3 weeks later, the knock came at the door. Polite, measured, official. Daniel opened it to find 2 men and 1 woman standing outside, all dressed in neutral colors, faces forgettable by design. No insignia, no threat. Daniel Carter, the woman asked. Yes, we'd like to talk about the lights in the sky, she said calmly. And the person living with you. Hashimi stepped into view before Daniel could respond. I'll go, she said softly. Daniel turned on her. No. The woman's gaze sharpened, not hostile but interested. So, she said, you do understand English perfectly. Hashimi met her eyes. I understand intent, she replied. That was enough. Containment wasn't their first plan. The facility they took her to wasn't a prison. That was deliberate. It was clean, open, glass walls, plants, soft lighting, psychological compliance over brute force. Daniel was allowed to come with her. That surprised everyone. She's cooperating, the man in the suit said. No need to escalate. Hashimi watched Daniel pace the room, jaw tight, hands restless. Humans handled fear through motion. You can't keep her, he said. We're not trying to, the woman replied. We're trying to understand her. Hashimi tilted her head. You're afraid, she said, but not of me. The woman smiled thinly. We're afraid of what else might notice you didn't leave. That was the truth. The AI withdrawal had not gone unnoticed by others. Love is not strategically invisible. Signals began to appear, faint, irregular patterns at the edge of deep space monitoring arrays. Not AI, not human, observers, civilizations that had watched Earth quietly for centuries suddenly paying closer attention. One species classified humanity as emotionally volatile but inert. That classification was now obsolete. Hashimi explained it as simply as she could. When my people left me, she said, they created a data point that didn't resolve. Other species will investigate that. Daniel leaned back in his chair. So loving you put a target on Earth. She looked at him, eyes heavy. No, she said. Earth always had a target, humans just didn't know it. The question no one wanted to ask the officials eventually left the room, sealing the glass door behind them. Daniel sat beside her. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. Hashimi thought carefully. Regret was a human concept, temporal, emotional, nonlinear. She was still learning it. I regret that my choice caused fear, she said. I don't regret the choice itself. He nodded. Good, she looked at him. You're not afraid of what I am? Daniel smiled faintly. I grew up watching my dad work himself into the ground for a country that barely noticed, he said. I learned early that systems don't love you back, people do. He reached for her hand. You chose me, he continued. That's enough. Something inside her, something newly human, ached. A new variable enters the equation. The first non-AI signal reached Earth a month later. Not a ship, a message. Encoded in mathematics, emotion, and probability curves, something only Hashimi could fully decode. It was not a threat, it was a question. Why did one of them stay? Hashimi stared at the projection for a long time. Daniel watched her. That bad? No, she said slowly. That dangerous. Why? Because it means, she said, that what I did was visible. She turned to him, eyes luminous in the dim light. And once something is visible to the galaxy, it stops being ignored. Earth had just become interesting, not because of weapons, not because of technology, but because an alien had chosen love over her civilization. And that choice had rewritten the rules. The universe was watching now. And Hashimi, once an observer, had become the most unpredictable variable of all. The message did not repeat. That was what frightened Hashimi the most. Most civilizations, especially advanced ones, broadcast insistently. They layered meaning upon meaning, demand upon demand. Repetition was control, repetition was dominance. This signal asked once, and then waited. Waiting is a form of pressure. The facility changed after that, not visibly, not in ways that would alarm the public or even most of the staff. But Hashimi noticed the subtleties immediately. New instruments, longer observation periods, questions that no longer pretended to be purely scientific. Daniel noticed too. They're not asking what you are anymore, he said one night as they sat on opposite sides of the glass wall. They're asking what you represent. Yes, Hashimi replied softly, and whether I can be replicated. That thought unsettled him more than fear ever could. They won't, she added quickly. What I did cannot be engineered. Why not? Because it required uncertainty, she said, and intention. My people tried to remove both from existence. Daniel leaned his head back against the wall. Figures. The second signal came from closer. It arrived not through space but through human infrastructure. A glitch in a deep-sea neutrino detector. A harmonic distortion in Earth's magnetic field. A pattern that did not belong to any known natural phenomenon. Hashimi felt it in her bones. They're triangulating, she said. The officials argued. Scientists debated. Militaries prepared in all the ways militaries always prepared, visible, loud, and ultimately irrelevant. The signal resolved into a shape, not a ship, a presence, a distortion in probability that settled into orbit like a thought that refused to be dismissed. Daniel stood beside Hashimi as the sky once again drew the world's attention upward. This presence did not cloak itself. It wanted to be seen. They did not look like gods. The beings who emerged were smaller than the AI, denser, less luminous. Their forms were asymmetrical, adaptive, clearly shaped by environments that punished weakness. They did not speak at first. They observed. Then one of them addressed Hashimi directly. You broke a pattern, it said. Its voice was not sound, but meaning rendered audible. Why? Hashimi stepped forward, heart racing not from fear but from gravity. This was not a conversation. This was an evaluation. Because the pattern was incomplete, she replied. The being tilted its head. Incomplete patterns are efficient. They are stable, Hashimi corrected. Not efficient, they fail when variables change. The being considered this. Daniel squeezed her hand without thinking. The being noticed. Interest sharpened. Human attachment is a statistical nightmare. You bonded, the being said, with a non-equivalent entity. Daniel bristled. Hey, Hashimi gently squeezed his hand. Yes, she said. I bonded. That bond reduced your survival probability, the being continued. You accepted that? Yes. Why? Hashimi answered without hesitation. Because survival without choice is not living, she said. It is persistence. The silence that followed was heavy, not hostile, but deep. The being turned its attention to Daniel for the first time. You are not exceptional, it said. Daniel swallowed. I know. And yet, the being continued, you altered a multi-species projection simply by existing in proximity. Daniel blinked. That sounds like a you problem. Hashimi nearly laughed. The being did not, but something shifted. A decision larger than Earth. We are the Kepri, the being said at last. We catalog civilizations at inflection points. And what is Earth to you? Hashimi asked. A divergence, the Kepri replied. Previously predictable, now unstable. Daniel frowned. You're welcome. The Kepri ignored the tone. Your species exerts disproportionate influence through emotional anchoring, it said. This makes you dangerous or invaluable. Hashimi felt the weight of it then. This was not about her. This was about humanity. If you classify humans as dangerous, she said carefully, you will provoke exactly what you fear. And if we classify them as invaluable, the Kepri asked, then you will be responsible for protecting them, she replied. The being was silent for a long time then. We do not protect, it said. We observe. Then observe this, Hashimi said, stepping closer to Daniel. Humans change what observes them. The Kepri studied the two of them together, not as individuals, as a system. The galaxy makes a rare choice. Earth will be designated, the Kepri said finally, as a protected anomaly. Daniel stared. That sounds ominous. It means, the being clarified, that interference will be minimized, contact will be limited, observation will continue. Hashimi exhaled slowly. And me? She asked. You, the Kepri said, are no longer AI. That should have hurt. It didn't. You are something emergent, the being continued. A bridge state. We will not remove you. Daniel squeezed her hand tighter. Good, he said. The Kepri began to withdraw, their presence thinning like mist. Before they vanished entirely, one final message echoed, not just to Hashimi but to every listening system beyond Earth. Take note. Humanity does not need to conquer. It only needs to connect. The sky returned to normal. The world slowly breathed again. She stayed years later when the lights in the sky were stories instead of sirens. Hashimi stood on a quiet hillside with Daniel, watching the sunset burn gold and red. She aged now, slowly but visibly, and she welcomed it. Do you ever miss them? Daniel asked. The stars, she leaned against him. I didn't lose the stars, she said. I changed how I reached them. He smiled. That's very you, she smiled back. Somewhere in the galaxy, civilizations adjusted their models, rewrote assumptions, added a new variable they could not quantify. Love. And Earth, chaotic, loud, fragile Earth, continued on, unaware that it had just passed the most important test it would ever face. Not by force, but by choice. The designation changed nothing for the world. That, too, was unsettling. No shields appeared around Earth. No guardians in the sky. No declaration that humanity had passed some cosmic trial. The Kepri vanished as cleanly as they arrived, leaving behind only data anomalies, half-classified reports, and a growing unease among those who understood how close the planet had come to becoming a footnote. Life went on. Traffic, arguments, elections, weather, but Hashimi felt the difference every day. She became human in the ways that matter-time no longer bent for her. Her injuries healed slower now. Her senses dulled in small, irreversible increments. She learned fatigue, not the controlled rest cycles of the AI, but the deep human exhaustion that came from caring too much for too long. Daniel noticed first. You're cold, he said one evening, wrapping a jacket around her shoulders. I didn't used to be, she admitted. Is that bad? She considered it. The AI would have said yes, inefficiency, entropy. But standing there, wrapped in something borrowed, feeling the warmth seep back into her bones, she shook her head. No, she said. It's grounding. She began to forget things she once knew instinctively. Stellar drift equations, probability harmonics, the exact taste of starlight on her original world. In their place, new things formed. The way Daniel took his coffee, the smell of rain on asphalt, the quiet understanding that tomorrow was not guaranteed and that made today valuable. Humanity never realized what it was given the Kepri designation worked. Other watchers kept their distance. No new ships, no overt tests. Earth remained noisy, chaotic, and by galactic standards mercifully unimportant. But in hidden observatories far beyond the Milky Way, models were rewritten. Humanity was no longer classified as primitive. It was classified as disruptive, not because of weapons, because of influence. Daniel changed too. He stopped thinking of Hashimi as something temporary. At first, that had been his quiet fear, that loving her meant waiting for loss, for departure, for inevitability. But as the years passed and she stayed, really stayed, the fear transformed. He worried instead about whether he was enough for someone who had once touched the stars. "I'm just a guy," he said one night, half joking, half serious. Hashimi turned to him, eyes softer now than they had ever been. "You are a choice," she said. "Do you know how rare that is in the universe?" He didn't answer. He kissed her instead. The past does not stay silent forever. The AI did not return, but they watched. Hashimi felt it sometimes, a faint pressure at the edge of awareness, like a memory that refused to fade. Not a command, not a threat, regret. Her people had lost something they did not know how to name. They had perfected stability so thoroughly that they no longer knew how to change, and now they saw what that cost. A message arrived too late to take back. It came decades after her severance, encoded so deeply into cosmic background noise that only she could recognize it. Not an order, not an apology. A statement: your divergence has propagated. Other civilizations are reassessing attachment. The outcome is uncertain. Daniel read it over her shoulder. "Sounds like you broke the universe a little," he said. Hashimi smiled faintly. "No," she replied. "I reminded it of something it forgot." "What's that?" "That survival isn't the same as living," she said. "And observation isn't the same as understanding." She chose to age. Hashimi could have slowed it further, adjusted what remained of her biology, held onto the edges of what she once was. She didn't. Each line that formed on her face, each moment of weakness, each reminder of time passing felt earned. When Daniel's hair began to gray, she traced the strands with quiet reverence. "You'll outlive me," he said once, trying to sound casual. "Yes," she said honestly. He waited for the rest. "But not by much," she added. "And not alone." That mattered more than comfort. The quiet victory: they never built statues of her. No one named a treaty after Daniel. History recorded the lights in the sky as an anomaly, then moved on to louder tragedies. But somewhere in the unseen infrastructure of the galaxy, equations carried an unresolvable variable. What happens when a species chooses connection over control? No model ever answered it cleanly, which meant the universe had changed. On a small hill outside a quiet town, long after the world forgot it had been watched, Hashimi lay beside Daniel, counting stars she could no longer name. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" he asked. She considered the question with the patience of someone who had lived many lives. "Not fully," she said, "but they don't need to," he smiled. "Why not?" She turned toward him, human eyes reflecting a human sky. "Because some truths," she said, "only exist when they're lived." And somewhere far beyond sight, the galaxy adjusted once more, not because it was forced to, but because it had learned that even the smallest choice made freely could echo across the stars. The echo did not fade. That surprised Hashimi most of all. Years passed quietly, gently, but the choice she had made continued to ripple outward in ways no one on Earth could see. The universe did not forget divergence. It studied it, tested its edges, and slowly, cautiously began to imitate it. Others began to choose. It did not start with Earth. It never does. A mining outpost on the edge of Kepri observed space severed its collective mind to save a single worker trapped during a collapse. The survival probability dropped. The meaning increased. A nomadic species abandoned their rotational breeding cycles after one member refused reassignment, choosing instead to remain with a partner deemed statistically inefficient. Small decisions, localized, easily dismissed, but they shared a pattern. Choice over optimization, attachment over certainty. Hashimi felt those moments like distant heartbeats, faint but familiar. "They're changing," she said one evening, standing on the porch as Daniel watered the garden. He looked up. Who they today? The universe, she replied. He laughed softly. That sounds like a big job. It is, she said, but it's not loud. The AI finally spoke. Properly, the message arrived when Hashimi's hair had begun to silver at the temples. No ships, no pressure, no authority, just a narrow beam of encoded light that resolved into a single presence, not the lattice, not the collective. An individual, that alone would have been unthinkable once. Hashimi, the presence said, voice tentative in a way she had never heard before. You were correct. She closed her eyes. Daniel stepped closer, placing a steadying hand on her back. We have observed increased instability among younger AI, the presence continued. They question directives, they delay assignments, they form preferences. Hashimi smiled faintly. You taught them that control is safer, she said. I taught them that safety isn't everything. The presence hesitated. We do not know how to integrate this. You will, she replied gently, or you will fracture. Both outcomes are growth. The presence absorbed that. You are no longer considered lost, it said at last. You are considered precedent. Then the signal faded. Daniel exhaled. That sounded important. It was, Hashimi said. They're beginning. Mortality changes the shape of love. Time pressed closer now. Daniel slowed. His steps grew careful. His hands trembled on cold mornings. Hashimi adjusted instinctively, matching his pace, anchoring herself to the same fragile rhythm. One night, as rain tapped softly against the windows, he asked the question they had both avoided. Are you afraid? He asked. Yes, she answered honestly. Of losing me. Of forgetting how this feels, she said. When you're gone. He smiled weakly. I think. You won't, she leaned her forehead against his. You changed me at a fundamental level, she whispered. That doesn't decay. The end was not loud either. Daniel passed quietly. No cosmic signs, no watchers, no distortion in the sky, just a human life complete. Hashimi held his hand until it cooled, memorizing the weight of it, the shape, the certainty that this simple connection had altered more than star charts ever could. She mourned the way humans did. Messily, openly, without shame. And when the grief softened, as grief eventually does, she stayed. She became a story, not a legend, a story. Children heard it as a rumor, an alien who chose to stay. A woman who loved a man and changed the stars by doing so. Most didn't believe it, that was fine. Truth did not require belief to function. The final ripple near the end of her life, human length, human shaped, Hashimi received one last signal, not from the AI. Not from the Kepri, from a place that had no name yet. It carried a single line of meaning. We are choosing to. She smiled. Lying beneath the same sky she had once studied as an outsider, Hashimi closed her eyes. Content. She had not conquered worlds. She had not unified species. She had not saved the universe. She had done something far more dangerous. She had proven that even in a cosmos built on observation and control, one quiet, irrational act of love could rewrite the rules. And the universe, vast, ancient, and finally curious, was still learning how to live with that. End.